Alright, welcome back to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions, your home for all things psycho. Today I'm continuing my Energon Universe coverage with Duke. My stuff's kind of out of order because I started with Void Rivals and then I jumped all the way to Cobra Commander. Which really, to kind of read this all in a series, you would want to read. There was a comment about this on one of my videos so far. Start with Void Rivals, go to Transformers, then read Duke, and then you can get to Cobra Commander and Destro and Scarlet, and eventually the G.I. Joe title will be coming out soon. So yeah, I should have read this before, but I mean, you can get by. I mean, they refer to each other. The stories are still pretty much standalone. But this Duke is G.I. Joe prelude, 100%. This is the setup of the team in the early years in the formulation. So, pretty cool stuff. Look, there's Starscream on the cover, which was the incident in Transformers where we got that glimpse of Duke, is this interaction between Starscream and Duke. We got Joshua Williamson, writing chops, Tom Riley, and Jordi Belair on the art. Cool design concept. Caution, the contents of this book is confidential. Fun design concept for the book. Really like it. Really love the art. I think that Tom Riley and Jordi Belair work well together. Although Jordi's coloring, I sometimes question. It was like, is this? It's great coloring. It's amazing coloring. No complaints on the coloring. But is this the right choice for this kind of book? Not sure, but it's fine. I mean, I'm not like against it. I was just like, it just felt almost too artsy in certain cases. Russ Wooten, again on the lettering. He's been doing all the primary lettering for a lot of these Skybound books and just very quickly becoming one of my favorite letterers. Alright, so we get an introduction to Duke. He is, of course, the all-American hero. It does everything perfect. But then he's basically in a rough spot. He's getting not reprimanded by General Hawk, but basically dude, you need to take some time off. Like, you're acting crazy. You're having a rough patch. And essentially it is because of what we saw in Transformers. Duke saw a fighter jet turn into a giant robot, which was Starscream, and crush his friend, his pilot. Killed him. And this whole time, the government's like, no, you didn't see anything, or that was just an experimental plane, that wasn't a robot, or like the government isn't telling the full truth. And he's pissed off. He's just, I would like to, he wants to find the truth. Really great mood being created here. I don't have a complaint at all about the art itself. Tom Riley's art, and very expressive. Just totally. I think he actually is a very good storyteller in a sequential sense. He really is able to, jump from panel to panel, and in terms of his compositions, and in terms of getting a really succinct flow with Williamson's writing. So I think they do work really well together. So here he's kind of grown his hair out a little bit long because he's taken off some time from the military to get his shit together. But he's kind of diving into conspiracies, trying to find out what this whole, alien UFO thing. A lot of people So he attends this conference where all these people are talking about all these different things, including um, Cobra Law and stuff. Like there's all these rumors of aliens and robots and terrorist organizations coming up. Like all these things are like mixing together in the Energon universe. Um, so he's working with different people to try to make that happen. Essentially, a lot of this gets pointed to, of course, Mars Industries, and this is where we actually get our introduction to Destro. Um, and so Mars Industries seems to be like the only organization that could create something like that. So he first tries to infiltrate Mars to see what he can find out. Gets interrupted by Mercer. So Mercer was an ex Cobra Viper that became a GI Joe in the cartoons. And here Mercer works for Destro. He's like Destro's number one man. We don't see Destro right away. He's kind of in the shadows at first, and so a lot of this is Duke kind of covertly working on his own. So this is where, you know, our um, artists really begin to shine, in conjunction with both coloring and lettering all together. We got Russ, Tom, Jordy. The colors are very basic, and so in places where there's not a lot going on, it can get, you know, it can get a little bland. And then whenever, you know, the action starts, you know, it's kind of like all over the place. So it, you know, the dynamics of the coloring really start coming into play. But in other cases, it's just kind of like, it's kind of there. And I mean, I think there's probably a purpose to that, but there are some moments where I'm just wondering if there could be a little bit more of a punch to some of it. So anyway, we get all kinds of stuff. We get an introduction to Stalker, Rock and Roll. So Stalker and Rock and Roll get pulled in to hunt Duke down because Duke is causing a problem, so they need to pull him in. And then we get an introduction to Clutch, who's buddies with Duke. And Duke is trying to get some help from Clutch at this moment in time. And Rock and Roll and Stalker come in to try to take Duke out. Not really take him out, but just, you know, bring him in. And they eventually do. They bring him and Clutch, and they get put away in the pit, which is basically an abandoned facility at this point. In the comics, it was a big deal. It was their actual base. But it's basically an underground prison at this point. Mars decides to bring in Major Blood to get Duke because he is causing issues for Mars. And in the prison, we get an introduction to Baroness. So we're getting all these key players coming in. Really interesting stuff. So push comes to shove. All of this is kind of coming into a crux, essentially. Here's one of those cases where I question the lettering, or the coloring a little bit. Just, you know, these like really stark colors, especially the reds, just, it's a little much. I wonder if there could be different gradations, or I think that, you know, there are certain colors, especially for a military comic, when they stand out too much in a strong neon style way, it's just a little like oof. And maybe it's my old age and reds are just becoming too hard to look at anymore. I don't know, because all of this is fine, and it works very well with the coloring. But there is one thing that I noticed that Jordy is doing with the coloring, and if you've noticed throughout, in G.I. Joe, the primary lasers that were shot back and forth between Cobra and G.I. Joe were red and blue. And we're getting a lot of that. Like, we're getting a lot of stark reds and blues as the story moves along. So I think this is deliberate in what he's doing. It's just the saturation of the coloring sometimes hurts my brain. So we get a lot. We get. I don't want to give away too much because I really do want people to go out and buy it. But all this stuff basically comes to a head, and it all propagates into the formulation of G.I. Joe. Knowing that we have these threats coming up, we've got this energy source called Energon that Mars Industries is using for their particular weapons. We've got this other type of threat coming up. There's Destro. This other threat coming up that we don't know of fully yet, but is being, is basically Cobra. But we also have the alien robot infiltration jumping into the fray. Essentially, we've got a lot of the basic Joes. The pit is being retrofitted into a headquarters again, and they're asking Duke to come in and take over. But really, the primary threat is not yet Cobra that they know of, but they think is the Transformers. So yeah, it was actually really cool. It was fun. I liked it. There's a backstory that is an epilogue of basically the recruitment of Baroness. So Baroness is actually going to be in G.I. Joe from the very beginning. I did not like the art so much in this one. It was not Tom Riley. It was, and no offense to the artists, it just wasn't my cup of tea for this kind of book. Jason Howard. I actually did like the coloring. I think I would have preferred this style of coloring throughout the book. Mike Spicer. So I did like the coloring, but I just, I don't know, it was a little too cartoony. But is essentially Duke was recruiting Baroness because she kind of took off at the end of the last story. And she's going to be one of the members of the G.I. Joe team, and we get a glimpse of some of the others that are getting recruited, including Scarlet, which is another one of the books that has come out so far. And we got Flint and Lady J a part of things. So we get a formulation, a lot of the primary team members coming up. It is interesting that they're making Baroness a Joe at first. So we'll see how that plays out. She'll probably eventually betray them and go to Cobra, I'm imagining. Or maybe they'll keep her. I don't know. I like it. It's all fun. Again, really powerful. Tom Riley, his action, very similar to Daniel Warren Johnson's. Just very dynamic, a lot of fun. Really understands the weight of vehicles and machinery, which is very important for a G.I. Joe comic, I think. If you have an artist that doesn't understand the weightiness of like the weapons and vehicles, it just feels fake and cartoony and dumb. But that's what makes G.I. Joe really cool, especially in comic form, is you have somebody that really understands how these tools and machines work and understands how to draw military stuff. So, love it. A lot of fun with it. It wasn't my favorite of all of the stuff so far. It was cool to see everybody come in. But in terms of story, I mean, I would say Cobra Commander and Transformers are still my top favorite of the Energon stuff. But I like it. It was good. I'm looking forward to the rest. Oh, my only other major complaint, again, they're reprinting this stuff, and there are no chapter breaks. There are no chapter breaks, and we don't get any, even just like glimpses of the covers. They did the same thing with Transformers, and and Void Rivals. Like, there's not even a pinup gallery of the covers, of all the different covers of number 1, because this contains number 1 through 5. So what the heck? Why don't we at least get a gallery of the covers in the back, or in some kind of chapter break? Because it's really hard and exhausting to just read straight through without any kind of breaks this many pages. So I'm making the complaint, Skybound. That's When you have these collected editions, you need to do something like that. Please. Please. Alright, that's my review of Duke number 1 through 5 in the collected volume edition. You can go check it out now by Skybound. And that's it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Stay safe out there. Keep it psycho.